It was middle of winter. It was like 2 below. You got given a blanket. She's like, "You're going to die if you stay here. You're not an African. You're a white man."
I've talked to a lot of amazing people on this channel. I've talked to rock stars, authors, actors, people who've come out of difficult situations and found freedom from toxic thinking. This guest, Aaron Young, has probably got the most incredible story I've ever heard, and we barely scratched the surface of the iceberg. I really resonate with his message of really looking at what's holding us back and how we can travel the world through these podcast conversations. We can be exposed to injustices and things that we had no clue about, and we can develop a compassionate, globally minded, heart-centered community. That's the goal. That's what I want to create here. So I hope that you will listen to this conversation with an open heart, and you will contact him if what he's doing resonates with you. Hello and welcome to this podcast conversation of the Epic Kate Show. When I found you on Facebook, I was just like, this sounds like a story for 100 podcasts or a whole YouTube channel covering a year. Like, I'm sure we won't get into even the tip of the iceberg, but I'd love to let you go for it and tell your story.
Wow. Okay. Where do we start?
That is a good idea. Good question.
It is for me because it just depends. Look, we can start with what's current in my life purely because today has been quite a stark reminder of my last few years. So look, I'm 47 and I'm Australian. There is a lot there to talk about, but let's just talk about I'm Australian, but I wouldn't call myself that because I spent 15 years abroad. I left Australia in 2004 and lived in the Middle East for a few years, and then just by providence ended up in Africa. South Africa to begin with, and then I found my way to a country called Zimbabwe, which is just north of South Africa. I fell in love with Africa mainly because of the wildlife and the animals, and I didn't have a background in anything other than being an animal lover, but I very quickly fell in love with the wildlife, especially sort of elephants and lions. And then I fell into work. I mean, I started actually hunting in Mozambique, and by accident, just purely looking to make some money. Very quickly, I saw what was happening within that industry and decided for myself very quickly it was not something I wanted to be involved in. At the time, I needed money, so I stopped the hunting, and then I went to filming. So I was filming, hunting, and then I was involved in a hunt where underage animals were shot, specifically a leopard, and dressed up to be a legal hunt, and that was it. I swore never to again, and I never did again. And then I went on the warpath and actually became a conservationist. So, I ended up working with a guy who was, he was an ex-combat tracker from the Rhodesian Bush War, but he was one of the best animal trackers white animal trackers in the country, in Zimbabwe. He taught me the trade. He taught me how to track animals, how to pick them up, how to move them to different places, how to buy them and sell them into different reserves, restock national parks. So that was an incredible part of my life, and I learned some incredible skills. So one day I woke up. There was a place on the northern border of Zimbabwe and Zambia. There's a town called Chirundu. Chirundu was known for its iconic local elephants that many people had holidayed with since their kids were born. You know, there were elephants up there with nicknames that people had photos of from when the elephants were babies from 40 years previous. Zimbabwe, in its state of collapse, started shooting them purely for political gain, for money, for buying votes. So when people are starving, elephant meat is an incredible source of protein. There's obviously a lot of meat on the animal. And the parks department there were looking for any excuse to shoot them. So whenever they would come into town, they would, interfere was the word they gave, or become problem animals. And they would chase someone, and then national parks would roll in, shoot it, and they'd strip the carcass of meat, and everyone would be happy because in that part of the world, like in most parts of Africa, the value of an elephant to the locals is zero. I don't care if it's alive or dead. It's food.
Yeah, and you can't really begrudge people being starving. Like, it's sad, but people are very important.
Yeah, and there's an imbalance that we will always put people before anything else, even to our own detriment, because when the environment collapses, we can't sustain the people. But when there's no education, that war is completely lost. So you can't even have it. So I started protecting the elephants and putting a value on them. And so I started using different techniques like chili resin, which was shot at the elephants to create what was called a virtual barrier or a border around the town. So whenever they would enter town, we would shoot at them with these homemade PVC guns full of ping pong balls with chili resin, and we would force them out of town. And we would teach them, like a naughty dog, don't come back here, stay away. And it started to work, really work, like incredibly well. A couple of stubborn older bulls, they would still come in. So then we started doing things like I was sort of investigating the use of bees. Elephants and bees don't like each other. Surprisingly, you'd think a small little tiny bee, but they'll sting them, and they sting them around the tip of the trunk. So a noisy beehive would keep an elephant away, especially a bull elephant. So I did that. But what happened in the journey of me doing that was I got a big mouth, and I'm a bit of a crusader. I sort of went to war with corruption, and I went to war with politicians, and I went to war with a lot of people. I wasn't shy to share my opinion. And then I went to war with a lot of white conservationists too, because I saw a lot of corruption on that side. And I made a lot of noise, but I won my battles and I was fair, but I wasn't liked, which I didn't really mind, to be honest. I didn't care one bit. But this is what led up to inevitably happen. So I did my conservation thing for years. I ended up working with a team of vets called Aware Zimbabwe, which is on my Facebook page, where I, by accident, became a bit of a line relocation expert. So this was trapping or darting problem lines, again, in conflict with humans in places like Kariba or the Zambezi Valley, and shifting them out of the area so that they no longer, have a conflict with the humans present. So I used to shoot a lot of footage on that as well. I've had bits and pieces on Sky News, and in fact, a ton in the States that was played of just of families of lions that we moved. So I'd get the mother first and I'd get her son next, and it would be just this ongoing thing with them as we moved them. Again, incredible. Again, big mouth. Again, stirred a lot of trouble. But again, I was always fair and I was operating on morals and integrity. And as much as people didn't like it, especially Zimbabwe, from my humble point of view, sorely needed people who were sort of walking with integrity and morals and wouldn't do the corruption and wouldn't take $1 to sell their souls. So I did this for quite a while, probably 5-6 years. And then I had the birth of my second child, my son. And what I realised very quickly was conservation wasn't going to pay the bills. It's not something you do. You don't get paid. And when you do, it is very, very little. So I had to get a job. So I went to a local wealthy man and said, I need a job. I've got to come out the bush. And he said, yeah, sure. I've got a little farm just on the outskirts of Harare, which is the capital of Zimbabwe. And what do you think about farming? I'd never stepped foot on a farm really in my life, except when I was a little kid, just playing around. So I said yes. And what I found out very quickly was this wasn't a small farm. This was 240,000 chickens across 3 locations that was in $2 million in debt, which is all cool because I love a challenge. So that was all really cool. But what slowly unfolded was corruption, theft, embezzlement, and lies and deceit in a way that I tried to fix it all. Yeah, I really tried to fix it. There was one director, white guy, both directors white, one a drug addict, one a millionaire. Drug addict stealing, millionaire trying to get the owner who was the drug addict out the farm. And I got caught in the middle of this because I stupidly said yes. And then when I was involved, I thought I can help both parties here. I can help this guy get off this farm, but he can get value and get paid. And so I did what I normally do. So I turned the farm into a profitable, making my first round of 240,000 chickens, which I'd never seen in my life. I made $210,000 net, and it was all realized the farm was profitable, which is great. But again, what I found out very quickly was there were people there who didn't want it to succeed. On the drug addict side were a lot of politicians who were being paid with the theft, the stuff that was being stolen. So their money dried up. So they came gunning for me. And to cut a long story short, because it goes on and on and on, when I say gunning for, I would wake up with AK-47s in the window. And it was there. They don't mess about. Now, these were empty rifles. Look, the one thing about Zimbabwe is they can buy a gun, but they can't afford a bullet. So it's a false promise, but the truth is it's still not a nice thing to have guns pointed at you the way it happened with me. After 6 months of this, I had to leave the farm. But by that point, I'd upset so many people. I'd dismantled the embezzlement. I'd turned it into a model farm. And I left on a high note. I guess basically being able to say I'd done my best, even though there was no way I could stay on that farm without risking my life and also potentially my family's now, because it was just that politically motivated now and it had become a full-blown war. So I left the farm and I went and took a nice quiet job, and I was happy being dad, and it was a major turning point for my life because at that point I split with the mother of my kids, mainly for alcohol reasons. I had ended up, sadly, they like a drink in Africa is the way I simply put it, a lot. And I followed them, but I'm not one of them. And so I decided one day to stop completely, which was cool. There was a beautiful co-parenting relationship and it all was very amicable. There was no hate, no love lost, and just a difference of opinion. The problem was about 10 months later, the politics in Africa changed, and the politicians who I'd upset on the way up on the farm came for me again. And so 6:30 on the 2nd of December 2018, I was arrested. And in my office, I would literally gone into work early. I couldn't sleep because I had a gut feeling something was weird was about to happen, and I could be wrong. I wasn't wrong. So I spent 48 hours in torture cells, them trying to break me to get me to leave Zimbabwe. They just wanted me to leave. It was a politically motivated thing. Get out. Now, at the time, I didn't know this. All I knew that I was in serious trouble. There was immigration people, there was police, there was CIO, which is a Central Intelligence officers. Everyone was there. And I just knew I was in deep trouble. I thought it was conservation. I thought it was possible other stuff that was going on in Zimbabwe. What I now know is it was because of the farm issues. Yeah, so they couldn't break me. And I told them I wasn't leaving Zimbabwe except I was in a box. And eventually they said they'd oblige, which they wouldn't oblige. It sounds really scary and it wasn't nice, but don't get me wrong. They were never going to kill me. I don't believe for a second. But then they booked me into the system and I was charged with fraud, counterfeiting, overstay of a visa, and about 7 or 8 other charges. And so I was booked into prison. And so I went into Harare Central Prison for the first time. Disappearing from sight, so it took a while for people to find me, and then they found me, and we did what we do in Africa, and that is bribe everyone we can to try and get out again. So I spent just 3 and a bit weeks trying to bribe someone who would get me out of there so I could fight my case. Eventually bribed my way out, was released just before Christmas of that year, spent Christmas with the kids, and then decided I was going to fight the charges, that I believed that they were politically motivated and that I was going to find a way to do what I do, which is attack the system and prove that it was not me that was the problem, it was the system, which was just stupid because I was trying to crusade and I had such a name for myself, and it just, you have to know when to say when, but I wasn't leaving my kids. And the mother of my kids, she wouldn't leave because her parents lived there, so I wasn't leaving. So I went to court every week for almost a year. Paid all and sundry, bribed the judges, bribed magistrates, bribed public prosecutors, bribed security guards, bribed Zimbabwe prison service. You bribed everyone within the chain so that when the decision came down at the end, and it might be a little weird, the decision that was made, no one would question it, because obviously for the charges I've been given, I was supposed to do 10 years in prison. In the end, I negotiated a fine, or 3 fines, I think it was, and to be released on good behaviour. And the strict instructions were, go away, shut your mouth, don't make any more noise, no more conservation, no more crusading, just go do your quiet job. And at that point in my life, I was very happy to do that.
And I just want to interrupt you really quick. Sorry to throw a little bit. Here you are on YouTube making some noise.
Yeah, well, and I am, and I've decided to. And this is the reality of it, is I've actually decided to do that in the last few weeks, because what's happened has become, in my opinion, morally wrong, and that day that I went in for my sentencing, I realised how badly all the money I'd paid in bribes basically had vanished. I'd been set up. My lawyer set me up. So instead of going home to my kids, I was then thrown into the cells again under the courthouse, and then I was dragged back into prison, and I was sentenced. So I had to do, I think it was 3 months, 7 months, and then 10 years. The reality was there was a deal on the table, go away, go home. And I went, no, I'm staying. I'll fight you. I'll fight the charges. I'll stay in prison. I can handle it the first time, and I'll handle it a second time. And they went, oh, whoa. And I didn't expect it. The problem was I think day 2 of being in prison, my ex found me and she came into the prison. And this time around, I wasn't allowed to keep a scrap of my clothing, and I was in the proper prison attire, which was a pair of shorts where there was no shorts basically, and a shirt which consisted of a piece of material that sort of wrapped around your midsection and over your shoulder. It was just torn rags that you had to make something of. And she just burst into tears and said, it was middle of winter, it was like 2 below. You got given a blanket. She's like, you're going to die if you stay here. You're not an African, you're a white man, which is debate. Look, I'm strong and I'm tough, but I'm no African, especially Zimbabwean. I mean, they're built to take this horrible what's happening, but they're a lot tougher than any white man I've ever met on the planet. So then I decided, well, let's negotiate. Let's see what they'll give me. Let me out for 3 months. Let me get my affairs in order. And they're like, no, you got to go immediately. So that went back and forth. And eventually the fear outside was something bad was going to happen to me. So my ex's family paid for my ticket. And one day they came and picked me up and said, you're going home. They put me on a plane and sent me back to Australia. I didn't get to see my kids. My kids didn't know I was in prison. We didn't tell them because I didn't want them going into that place or knowing what was going on. So and then I went back to Australia, August or 4th September 2019. Got back to Australia, decided I'm not an Australian anymore. I've been gone too long. I'm going back to Africa. So I created a job in Mozambique it's on the eastern border of Zimbabwe. I went back to a place called Chimoio. I took up a job, very quickly got my kids across the border so I could see them and just explain something. So I got 2 days with them quickly. Then while waiting for a work permit, I decided, no, this isn't any good. I'm going to get across into Zimbabwe. So I smuggled myself across the Zimbabwean border illegally. Yeah, which again sounds pretty full on, but it's Zimbabwe. So it wasn't that hard. I went through an old cattle or an old piracy trade, an old place where it was known. They used to move diamonds and rubies into Rhodesian bush war. The South Africans used to use the routes. It was quite well known that it was a smuggling port. It's cool. It is really cool stuff. The truth was, it's not as dangerous as it sounds. It's not to me. To most people, it's insane. Yeah, so I went and spent Christmas with my kids, which was incredible. And in that time there, I was told that there would be plans for them to come to Australia. So I went back to Mozambique, packed my job in, and early January, basically agreed, all right, I'll go back and set everything up. So I flew back, I think, to Australia again on January about the 16th or 17th of 2020. Got back here not long after COVID hit. Yeah, and so that derailed everything. And the truth was, the mother of my kids had never planned to come. And I knew that very quickly once I got back here that she wasn't going to. I believed at the time because I think I wanted to. I think if I really was smart and I knew about, the way booze is used in that country and the way the connection to the family and that was, I think I probably heart of hearts, probably had a gut feeling. And so, yeah, it's been 500, I think, in 25 days since I hugged my kids. And, all the prison and all the other junk doesn't actually matter, to be honest with you. I'd go back to prison. Well, I wouldn't now because obviously, as I was telling you when I got in here, I was blessed by the universe or God or whatever you want to call it to have met an incredibly amazing, strong, intelligent, gifted woman when I got back here. And we just had a baby. Had a son. He's 8 weeks old. So no, I wouldn't go back to prison, but without saying that, I would do anything to get my kids back. Anything. You can see them actually behind me. That's the two of them up on the wall there in the picture. Yeah. Yeah, so that's recent. That's the recent stuff. I mean, and the funny thing is that is just the tip of the iceberg. There's stories in there. There's stories in there for days, and they're incredible stories. Because for me, I came from very humble beginnings, and what my story shows is that anything is possible. Most people would be probably a gibbering mess. They'd be drinking too much and they'd be, and I'm not. I've kept myself together. And my life's mission is to help other people, inspire them and give them hope when they don't think there is any.
So you decided, this is an incredible story. I need to get on the internet and find podcasts and YouTubers and share this. What was your motivation to do that?
Very simply, I've got a story that just that last few years if we were to unravel day by day and some of the incredible things that happen, like speaking about what it's like for 24 guys to hop off a truck and point guns at you, the feelings and all that in it, when you go into the depths of the stories, you get people riveted to it and they start to understand that anything is possible, that this guy did this and he sits and he talks about this. So that thing that happened to me, it's nothing. I can do this. The idea is to show to anyone that you can do anything. I'm no different to anyone else out there. I've got no military training. I got a little bit in the reserve, but I've got nothing behind me that would prepare me for anything that happened. Nothing. Yet I walked through it and I got through it pretty well unscathed. You know, I have my moments, especially when the issue with the kids comes up. It's probably my one last mission to understand and unravel properly. But the rest of it, I can talk about jail and I can tell you stories about the incredible guys that I was clicked up with, you know, Ethiopian guy named Daeli, a South Sudanese guy named John. There's guys from Burundi and Gambia, you know, stories of watching guys almost killed in front of. I can go through so much story. And the beautiful part of all that story is when you tell it, people get this, they're like, that thing that was holding me back doesn't have the weight it should. Why is it an anchor? Throw it off. You know, I'm motivated by getting into the depth of that story more and more with people and giving them reason to stop sitting still, get up and take some action in their lives.
Yeah, that resonates with me, and just wanting to use my channel as a place to give people the opportunity to tell these stories and to stand up to something that's not right resonates with me. Like, I had a conversation with a woman talking about getting out of her spiritually abusive marriage, and I was the first person that she was willing to do that with, you know, put her story out there. And it's like, I want to tell all the stories. Corruption, abuse, that can suck it, and we can put the truth out there, and people can not be afraid of the truth, even when there's so many rich people that are just doing everything they can to keep the status quo. The status quo sucks, and we need to break it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the only way we do that is by basically reaching out and starting to speak and starting to share. Yeah, because if we allow the mainstream or say, you know, the wealth or that to dictate what we listen to and what we hear, then that's going to be how we think and feel. And the only way we can educate people is when we start to share honestly about our little stories, because we are the people. I mean, as you know, that is part of what America's built off. And it's the same anywhere in the world. We, the people, are the countries, not the politicians and not all that other junk. We, the people. But yet we've lost our voice. And this is what podcasting and YouTubing gives us the ability to do, to speak again. Yeah, we don't have to be heard through a news channel. We can actually be heard through reality. And when we do that, more and more people can say, me too, or I've struggled, I can find hope now. Because if you watch the news and you sit there, you know, and get drawn into that, you're not going to find much hope. You're going to find crushing weight and depression and despair.
Mm-hmm. It's like with reality TV, they're pushing a story. They're taking the clips from an entire day, compressing it into 10 minutes, and this is the good guy and this is the bad guy. And you, with your story, people could have heard completely different stories. Heroic animal defender, blah, 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 or horrible fraud. Like, it's like who tells the story has the power of how to spin it to their agenda.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why we need the ability to start listening with our own ears and not being told. Yeah, and this is what we've done. We've swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. They manufacture it, and we chew on it. You know, we're like fish, and they throw us away. I don't believe it. That's why I think that this medium is so powerful. I think it's why I want to encourage it and why I want to use it more. And I think the more everyday people say, everyday guys getting up and just talking, the more likely they will. And I watch it now, Facebook, for all the things I don't like about it. When you create the right environment, allows people who are having daily struggles to just get on there and talk live to a camera, which they'd never do. And what that does is a ripple effect. Someone else watches it and goes, geez, that guy didn't care what he said or how he said it or how he dressed. He just spoke about his bad day or the fight he had with his wife and how he didn't know how to fix it. And they go, I can do that. Yeah. And that's that inspiration, giving people that idea of hope and giving them the inspiration to take action, because people love watching stuff and they love listening. But my idea is to put my foot up their backside to a certain degree and motivate them. Take action, because you can listen and read and you can watch all you like. It's not going to change your life until you do something with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I spent some time in South Africa as well. I was with the Christian theater company and we traveled around in a car doing plays. And while I was there, I had to be in a hospital for a few days because I had a miscarriage. And it was a really horrible experience in this hospital. It was the South Rand. It was a public hospital, because I'm not
Yeah.
one of the rich white people that could afford the $50,000 3-day stays.
Yeah.
But it cost $15 to get this thing happened. But hearing people moan through the night, like not being able to sleep, just not having any electricity in the bathrooms, like all this horrible stuff. And then I was thinking, why would I think that I deserve better treatment than all the people who live here, and this is the only treatment that they have available?
And that by African standards is good.
Yeah.
Like that's where you were. That's South Africa's probably behind small parts of Nigeria, the most developed of the African countries still left.
Yeah.
And you look in Zimbabwe. I mean, you look at in prison, like listening to people at night. Yeah, it's an interesting way to try and sleep when you've got people and you're surrounded by mentally ill people in prison, because there's no system for them. So, and they don't sleep. They literally just talk to themselves all night. 150 people in a cell, 6 by 15 meters. Yeah. So,
and it's like we need people who will never travel. And the only way that they'll hear about these experiences and hear about how people are actually living and be able to develop compassion for them is by hearing these stories.
It is, and you're very right. This is something that's medium, and that hopefully people now are embracing it and listening to more podcasts and more YouTubes will do, is travel by accident. And that is, with COVID, we can't get in a plane, but by listening to these stories, because we don't get exposed to them anymore. Really, America's bad, Australia is bad, Europe's not so bad, but Americans and Australians are very bad at living very sheltered lives. They have no real comprehension of what goes on outside their country. They'll have watched one documentary and they think they understand Africa or they understand Asia. And the truth is we don't. I do. I've done it. And if you've traveled, you've seen it. And it's not a good way for us to live as a global community to not understand what's going on in other parts. We may not be able to fix it. You don't have to feel guilty for it, but you do need to be understanding of it, because you know what it gives you is a deep sense of gratitude. When I came back to this country, I had nothing. I had no family, and instantly the government gave me money. Now I had some, and they gave me money and they gave me support, and they will continue to support me even if I struggle now. Now, yet I live in a country here where people, all they do is complain. And so one of the things I do is I talk about it and I go, do you realize that I've come from a place where in a prison 2 to 3 people would die daily, just purely through malnutrition, which means there wasn't enough food. There were people still dying of AIDS in the prison. Tuberculosis was still running rampant, so people were constantly sick. Now, if you go to the hospitals, it was just as bad. In fact, you were more likely at one point to die in a Zimbabwean hospital than you were in a Zimbabwean prison. That's how bad infection rates were. So what I do with that is I don't sit there and harp on about it. I talk to people, and I've said it here, please don't complain about anything in your life in front of me, because I won't get angry with you, but you will get lectured on just how good you have it. Because I was just in little Zimbabwe, neighboring Mozambique, and some parts was worse. I've been to parts of Asia that were worse, parts of the South Pacific, which aren't great. Having that deep sense of gratitude for what we've got helps us actually remain connected as a community too, because it's amazing. And you guys suffer a lot from it. That really quick division where people will be very anti everyone else for one very simple or small thing, that doesn't help any of us. It's not helping one of us to promote that division. And sometimes when we get to look at, or we get a glimpse of what it's like in another place, we stop and go, you know what? Geez, I got it good.
So are you starting your own podcast or YouTube channel? Or
no, I've got my YouTube channel. So I've got a life coaching business called Catalyst Coaching Australia. The idea when I came back was I couldn't find work because no one wanted to give. My CV is full of animal tracking and all cool stuff. But one thing about bureaucracy is, yes, you don't fit in. Like, you would think someone would go, wow, you can obviously do anything, but no one wanted to touch me. So I thought, well, what am I good at? We've talked about the last 3 years. We can go back to my time in the Middle East. I started life at a near-death experience where my mother tried to kill me and left me for dead. I was abducted at 5, and attempted molestation, and then that shaped me. So we can go in my entire life. It's got an incredible series of really cool experiences that shaped the man I am today. So I thought, what do? Well, I coach people through their shit. In all honest terms, sorry, excuse my French, but
it is what
I help people. Yeah, I help people when they're on their knees and not sure what's next. I try and be the guy that helps them say, it's not that bad, and this thing that's happening to you is full of a lot of lessons. There's a lot of gold down there. While you're down there on your knees, have a look around, because it's when you're down there when you tend to find just how strong you are, how amazing you are. Or also you start looking back and going, you know what, I need to fix this. I need to heal this. I need to understand it. We have to take action to do that.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That doesn't just...
Sorry. I can imagine that you would be really, really good to give practical advice about the next step, because you're such a puzzle problem solver, to help people achieve their goals.
Yeah, and I'm just good at supporting people. That name Catalyst, actually, I'm 47 now. It came to me when I was about 21 years old, and my aim when I was 21 was to help troubled youth. Even though I was a troubled youth, I just always thought that would be, and it didn't come to pass. And then I'm good at creating a space for people to be real about themselves, because our biggest enemy in the world is ourselves. There is no one person assigned to pick on us and make our lives bad. We do it to ourselves a lot of the time, and that's hard. I know there are people who've suffered traumas like I did myself at the hands of my mother and another person, which I didn't create. But how I saw the event hurt me. The event had its happening. How I saw the event for 20 years after was the damage, because I couldn't change the event. Can't go back unless someone invents a time machine. I can't erase it. But if I relook at the event with different eyes, I'll find that there was a positive in there somewhere. And people look at me and go, "You're mad." There's always. And I can tell you that because I've done it with every single experience. When you can do that, then you can motivate and inspire people to do the same thing with theirs. What we start doing is building community leaders, people who stand up and, stand in front of people and say, that place that you feel is hopeless, or you're not capable, well, I'm telling you that's a lie. And the person lying to you is you. Yeah, when we own the situation, when we become responsible for the outcomes, we take control of our lives back. Otherwise, it's always the politician's fault. It's always someone else. Whereas we need to look at ourselves in the mirror and go, this is my life. And so I use my story in that, and in my coaching business to try and simply explain to people how they can have a look in that mirror and deal with, what pops up.
That's awesome. I feel like that's a really good place to kind of leave things. Like, this video couldn't be 19 hours. Like, there's just too much. But I think for me, it kind of leaves me wanting more. And I think that's a really great place to leave people.
Cool. I agree 100%. It is, because like I said, and my reason for doing this is you could poke into what we've just talked about and go, Aaron, I want you to talk more just about that. And that could be a whole thing. So I'm happy for you to look at it and tell me, I want to be led by people, because I find that God in the universe works through people. And you will come and you will ask me a question which will not only help maybe someone who listens, but you may help me unravel a part of my story. And so I go with what God brings, because I just tend to find that when I get out the way, it unravels the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, that is so true. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. Oh, I said that in a New York accent for some reason. I'm from Utah. Thanks for talking with me. But first, I realized I didn't ask you, are you currently taking on clients? We can put all your links down below in the description.
Yeah. Look, I'll chat with people at the moment. Because I've got a newborn son and I'm spending every waking minute I can in being present for him. I'm re-looking at how I shape everything. But what I do with that is, again, as I've just explained, is I allow God and the universe to talk to me. So I will talk to people, and what I'll know very quickly is, can I help this person? If I can, I work with them. And I know, that works itself out. I don't take on everyone. I'd love to be making millions of dollars doing this, but my morals and my heart tells me to work with the people that I'm meant to work with.
That is so true. Like, to plug my little thing, I edit YouTube videos for people. And it's like, you can just really tell if people are going to be interested in a collaborative experience or not. Like, I don't want to work with people that are like, here's your footage, it's due on this day. I want to be able to say, hey, we can make this better together.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it is, and it's something that I'm seeing more of, is people working together. It's a very good point. True collaborations.
Yes.
Because
Cool.
when we step out the way, it intertwines and creates its own magic. And I love that. And this is something that, I love being a part of.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really making some magic with especially two of the ladies I'm working with. They let me bring out their personality, and it
Yeah.
helps them to open up more to, and we just make each other better.
Exactly. And that's what we do. And this is another thing for us to all remember, is that fundamentally human beings are beings of connection. Just like dogs, we are meant to be connected as humans. We've created a society that is not driven by that. And what we find is when we reconnect with people sincerely, like you just said, we start creating incredible things, because we're now going back to our true nature, which is to be connected. Throw, a lot of the technology aside for a bit and actually sit with people, or do this when you connect sincerely, and magic starts to happen. And God knows that the world needs a lot more of that at the moment.
Yes. So yeah, I can hear your dog getting pretty excited in the back there.
That's someone else's dog, but it's not mine. But there's no one crying or yelling, so it's not dire just yet.
The way that I finish my conversations is I give hugs.
Thank you. There you go, right back at you.
Thank you for watching or listening to this video. I hope it encouraged you. This channel is all about mindset, getting over toxic thinking, growing as a person. I hope you will subscribe, share this with a friend, and stick around for more. Thank you, and hugs!